As it is already 8:03, we can actually start with answering the questions, because this session is also without any presentation. So I hope people have some questions, would like to know something from us, any help needed. If you want, you can ask a question through chat, or you can also unmute yourself and ask a question online, because there are only a few of us. So please, if you want to know anything from us, just ask. Let me check what we're... Okay. Just before we get any other question, I'm just looking at what question I have answered on AskTOM from online questions. There was a question whether it's possible to disable character set conversion between clients and server. And the question was related to the fact that somebody used the so-called pass-through configuration to store some characters. Like that did not really correspond to the character set of the database and the client, and they wanted to disable the character set conversion. So yeah, the short answer is it's no longer possible. It was possible in Oracle 7 through some hidden variable, but it is not possible any longer for many years already. So if you have this type of problem, you unfortunately have to clean up your database and make sure that the data is stored properly in the database as declared, so that the database and the client side recognize the character set information and can convert correctly. This is especially important nowadays, where there are so many Java clients connecting, and Java clients are hard-coded to use Unicode. And so they use UTF-8 for the communication, and UTF-16 internally for character storage. So they will always do the conversion from the database character set. So if the data in the database is not according to what the declaration of the character set says, then the conversion will of course yield something incorrect. So that's why it's so important to actually store the data correctly and not try to cheat by using the database like a raw storage. If you need to store something as raw, just store it as raw, right? Then there will be no conversion, and you can store whatever you want. This is actually okay. I'm just reading the question that Sven asks on chat. My first question is it a question for XE11G or 18C? Because it may be relevant. For 18C, we haven't so maybe I haven't looked at this release closely yet, because it was released very recently, a few weeks ago. But as far as I know, the approach is that this time, so in contrary to 11G release, the approach is now that there should be as little changes, as few changes as possible to the enterprise edition software when it becomes the XE software. So of course there are some restrictions added in the code. There are some features are removed or blocked, but generally most things should work as in enterprise edition. And with this, it would mean that at least for the database, it should be possible to install a new time zone file like you do in any other edition of the database. There, I see no reason why it should not work. So I will have to look at the database to make sure that the DBMS DST package is still there to allow the normal upgrade procedure to run, and that the time zone files are there externalized, and I assume they are. It makes not much sense to actually remove this functionality, especially that it's critical for proper functioning on the data of the database, and has very little, let's say, business value gain from removing this. Is just more work to remove the functionality. So I assume it should be doable in 18C XE version. Okay, let me see the other questions. That one. Generally, the NLS lang should be also, or is generally setable as an environment variable. So if you need to override it per application, you just need to make sure that it's set for the application correctly. And you can even do this internally in the application itself before you call OCI. Before you initialize ACI, you use whatever is the put-env corresponding function. You set NLS-lang as an environment, and then it should be taken care of or used by the OCI, including the instant client. The new instant clients also have most of the actually the main parameters that are settable through NLS-lang. You can override them in OC NLS-env call. So if this is homegrown application, not a off-the-shelf application, then you can modify the application easily to use your own setting to initialize the database connection. Okay, yeah. So indeed, there is a problem with lack of patches for XE. This is a good question. I have actually to write it down and contact the product manager for XE and check if this is something that we may, because generally there are no patches, indeed, right? So yes, you theoretically, of course, I mean technically you can upgrade. Because you don't really need a patch, you just need to add a file into the right directory and then run the proper scripts. However, there is of course the licensing problem of where to get this file from, because it's not a public file from YANA, it is an Oracle specific file, so it's protected by the software rights, software license. So I need to talk to to the product management from XE and check with them what would be our Oracle position from licensing point of view, so that we could, for example, publish the time zone update on OTN. It's a simple file, so that you can and provide some manual procedure for installing this file in the right directory. Generally, if you just copy the file and restart the database should be able to find out this file automatically. So there is not even like a directory file that points to all these types of files. So this technically it should be doable. From technical, I mean from a licensing point of view, I have to check. Okay. For the NLS-lang question, is the like environment variable or the modification of the application an option? Or because actually I looked at the instance client quite long time ago, probably 11 times or maybe even 10G times. At that time, there was no Oracle Home really for instance client, right? It would not generally have any Oracle Home. So I don't know if it changed and we now have a home. If there is still no home, then probably there will be no, I guess. In which case, environment variables or the programmatic control from your application would be the right approach. So if Dennis, you could let me know if this answers your question, then I would be okay. I see your answer. Okay, and Oracle. Okay, so this is like I see. Okay, so then this is I guess a common high for all IC clients. Then I would say the environment variable would be still your best option. Environment variable if you have no control over the application itself. I mean the code of the application. If you have control of the code, then you can build whatever mechanism you want yourself, and then control the settings using the OC and NLS create. I think is the function called before you actually initialize the connection inside the application. Then you can set the environment, or you can pass the parameters to the function itself. It has additional parameters for language and territory, I think since Oracle 12 or something like this. So this was a functionality added for JDBC because JDBC needed it to initialize session independently of the environment. And if there is a common Hive, I mean registry branch for all instance clients, then this is what the core library reads, right? And our globalization functions just rely on the core functions, so we don't have any backdoors to implement anything for NLS-lang easily, specifically for NLS-lang. So we follow all other settings. So if you can set other settings per client, then it works. If not, then it won't work for NLS-lang or other NLS settings either. However, you always have environment variables that should work, which have priority over registry settings normally, at least for normal client. Any other questions or maybe some further details on your questions needed. Is there any like longer subject, something for a presentation, short presentation that you would like to see in the next office hours session in 1 month? Something that I could prepare better and talk some 15 minutes or maybe half an hour, even if the subject is wider. Okay, I see no further questions or, okay, sorry, one. Okay, setting the correct character set from the client. Yes, okay. I mean, I guess what the question is, what is the right is the question for, I understand, for the right value for the NLS-lang variable for like OCI based clients, right? Java does not have any characters. Actually, Java also has a character set setting, but on its own side, right? So this is like file encoding. This is a different thing, but also an interesting topic to discuss. Yes, I can try to prepare it, because we know that it is often misunderstood and it leads to the pass-through scenario, garbage in, garbage out scenario. So it might make sense to talk again about it. It's basic thing, did not change for many years, but new people are starting their adventure with Oracle software and get hit by this topic that not everybody understands. Okay. For this vendor software question, of course, okay, yes. I'm reading the chat question, and sure. So if you have, by the way, if you have any example of any vendor that actually has a wrong installation guidelines about character sets, then please you can ask this question over AskTOM. And I mean, not the AskTOM directly, but for office hours questions, right? There is a place to ask questions for office hours sessions, and then you can include this example in this question, and then I can do some investigation and see how it works, because there are various vendors that, for example, one of the very large vendors, SAP, right? They used to use Oracle database a few years ago, right? So this is not the current situation, but previously they always used the database with P1, right? So they did their own character set conversion. They basically used the varchar to data type as raw data type to store everything without really looking at it as P1 data. So they relied on their own client software to do the all character set conversion that was needed. And then they noticed that it's not very practical, and they moved to Unicode, right? So now the SAP databases are Unicode databases. So there may be situations where vendor instructions are actually correct. I mean, from Oracle perspective, they are not correct, but the vendor takes responsibility for managing everything, and whatever cheating they do, it's their cheating. This is their responsibility, and the instructions may be actually correct. I mean, from Oracle perspective, we would say we don't really support it, but if they support it, then it's up to the vendor to help their customers in case there is any problem. But certainly, I can do some general session about character sets and what are the possible issues with setting things incorrectly, like for example NLS lang to AL32 UTF-8, which generally won't work unless the application does the conversion internally itself. Yes. Okay, I understand the problem, and as I will mention this in the session then, that this asset, this is really vendor responsibility, and it does not have to lead to data corruption, assuming there is no access outside of the application of the vendor, right? So you may not be able to read the data correctly using your own tools, but okay, so as long as something is accessed by the vendor and vendor takes responsibility for their client-side character set conversion, it will work. If you try to use SQL developer to read the same data or write it, then it may fail very well. Okay, so it's a good idea for a topic, and I will try to prepare something for the next office hours in February or March. I guess I will try to do this in February. Okay, so if there are no more questions, no more topics, then let's finish for today. And I hope you will join us in a month, and then I will try to do some nice presentation about the character set settings for the client, what to look at, and what are the dangers of setting things incorrectly. And I will try also to discuss the issue of vendor settings. So thank you very much.